Well, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ardrey, known as Dr. Money, and every Wednesday, if it's noon Pacific time, you know it's me showing up to come to you and talk about, my favorite topic. We talk about mindset here because really, isn't that the key to everything? So, I decided to share my journey as a startup CEO dealing with a company where I'm raising capital. It's a global organization and all of those impacts. Because oftentimes, when you have folks around you and they don't understand your story, I've had people describe me as a little bit like a swan, that's floating gracefully across the water, but they don't see the fact that my feet are kicking like hell underneath. So this idea around mindset was, in a sense, me kind of pulling back the curtain and sharing, just like everyone else, that when I talk about being able to heal your body, mind, body, and soul, that I recognize that it's a challenge. The reason you have to work on it daily is because daily you'll have new challenges, and they can be from things like, again, any CEO that I talk to, part of their job is to raise capital. And oftentimes, when you're, as I like to call it, kissing frogs, not all of the frogs turn out to be a prince, and some of them haven't been tamed. So, needless to say, they drop all kind of nuggets in ways that are truly unnecessary. Because at the end of the day, frankly, if it is you're not investing in my particular sector, you can say that without being you know what about it, right? You just say, I'm not interested in the sector and keep it pushing. Frog kissed, move on, make space for the next one. But anyway, each Wednesday, we get together and we talk about mindset because, again, I think that that's an area that's essential. And I know that along my journey, I've had to spend as much time investing in my expertise in my various areas of focus and deep domain knowledge gathering and development. But I had to spend as much time investing in tools to make sure that I was feeding and nurturing my mindset. And I did that by studying a lot of things around leadership, uh, studying biographies of successful entrepreneurs. I am a big fan of biographies of those who've made it, right? And those who have managed to triumph over tragedies. I think that's probably why I also love the Olympics. My mother was a big fan of the Olympics because you think about it, all of the discipline and dedication necessary to prepare to compete. And oftentimes it comes down to, a few seconds, a minute or two in those competitions that determine the outcome. And then you're back to training for another 4 years or more for that next window of just a few minutes. Well, anyway, in our conversation, mindset, motivations, and manifestations. And so today will not be any different than any other day. I'm so excited. My guest, Chynna Morgan. She is the CEO of Vidlo. And I'm going to tell you what her bio says about her because, she's a two-time tech founder and has worked with several companies worldwide, helping them grow their brands using video content, which is so important. She really is a trailblazer at the intersection of marketing and music technology. And she remains on the cutting edge with her current company, which is in the sector of ad tech. Vidlo is a turnkey solution for launching user-generated campaigns, video campaigns, to help brands capture these testimonials and contents from their customers. And you know how much we need that. We all need third-party endorsements, right? And she's dedicated to sharing her innovative ideas and perspectives on engaging with your audience while helping you increase your business. I've placed her contact details in our chat, so be sure to check it out. And I'm going to bring on Miss Chynna so that we can have our fantastic conversation. Hey,
Well,
lady, how are you today?
good. How are you? Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for the awesome intro. I appreciate it. That was great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I've been so excited from the lead all of our lead up conversations to today.
Yes, yes, we've had some great combos for sure.
Absolutely. I almost feel like we should have had an ongoing series, right? Because each time we touched on something that's really so meaningful, but it also speaks to really that understanding of kind of that, to me, I say different regions of the world, you see a lot of natural entrepreneurs. And to me, I think the Bay Area is really a place that cultivates, but we also are of a different breed, right? There's a certain
Yeah.
level of integrity and, work
Hustle. Yeah.
hustle
Yeah.
hustle that goes with it. Like, we get that part. When I tell people that, I used to walk the house parties with Too Short when we were teenagers, and again, we were walking and he was selling. Right. So it was before an automobile kind of thing. But you know what I'm saying? But those kinds of things, when you reflect back and you go, it's like there was a certain hustle to it. It was like there was no reason why we could not. When I
Yeah.
was an entrepreneur, one of my early mentors worked directly with Steve Jobs. So I felt like I kind of lived vicariously through her work with him as I was building up that startup. And I keep telling people I kind of grew up with Silicon Valley as it was forming. So there's a
Yeah.
special something.
You know what? I think whether you're in tech or not, and you're in the Bay and you're an entrepreneur, you get that Silicon Valley vibe, anyways, right? Because it's like, I think it's a vibe of like, it's like this positive energy of like, you can do anything you put your mind to it. Like, I could build a company, they're building it, right? So it gives you like this like, I don't know, this energy of like, you could do anything you put your mind to. And if they can do it, I can do it. So I think it's that vibe in the Bay that people kind of drive off of.
Absolutely. And so I love being from the Bay. And there's also that level of integrity. And so I
Yeah.
love coming home and having people that, you've known across the journey. And they were like, yeah, I remember what it is, you've contributed. And I remember that along that journey of how those contributions have manifested. So it really feels like home.
Yeah.
All right.
I love the point that you just made is like people appreciate the journey, right? Like they
Yeah.
appreciate and will give you your props of like, thank you for getting me here. Like, how can I give back to you? How can I give back to the community? So I
Yeah.
love that you pointed that. That's a great thing of the Bay for the Bay.
Well, it's so amazing because one of the things that I'm doing is I'm working on a book called The Magnificence of Mentorship. And I was going back paying homage to some of my early mentors. And it's been amazing just to capture people on video and have them, tell you stories about, what they saw in you when you were a young person and just starting
Mm,
out along that journey. And it's just really insightful.
yeah.
And I'm glad that I knew early on to do that, though, because even when I had my first expansion from the Bay Area, one of my early mentors was the former superintendent of schools, Miss Carolyn Gettridge. But at the time that she was a mentor, I was a student aide working for Oakland Unified School District in the GATE program, and she was over that program. So
Okay.
I remember working under her, tutelage. And then when I became successful, she asked me to come back and speak. And, it was just like my honor to be able to contribute in a meaningful way,
Yeah.
in supporting the young people and just, being that stand, and reflection of the community.
You know what? I think when you realize how people have lifted you up, the only thing you can do is give it back. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we're seeing is like it's the circle, right? Because you're
Yeah.
so appreciative. Like you didn't have to pour into me, but you did. So how can I continue this forward and pour into other people just like me? So
Absolutely. And
yeah.
that's really what this journey is about. All right. So today I want to talk to you about my favorite topic, mindset. So let me present the question. So
Okay.
the question is, when did you first realize you had a particular mindset? And part two of it is, do you think that your mindset is the result of how you were nurtured, your nature, or a little bit of both?
Okay. So the first question is, when did I figure out I had a mindset, right? First
Yes.
question. So I think when I was younger, so I've always had like this entrepreneur spirit. Like I'm 4 or 5 years old trying to like figure out how can I build a hospital or like telling my parents, like, I want to invent this, right? So I've always had that. But when I was younger, my mom introduced to me to the book, The Secret, when I was like 13, right? And I really think that really kind of like switched my mindset of like, okay, I could do anything I put my mind to. Your thoughts are so powerful. How are you manifesting your thoughts so they can be real? So I literally took that literally, that book, and that has made me to where I'm at today. So I think in terms of mindset, that's what you need as a founder, as an entrepreneur. If you don't have a mindset, you really don't have anything at all, because everything starts up here, And
Absolutely.
oh,
No, go
and
ahead.
and the second question, say the second question one more
And
time.
so the question is, do you think that it was part of just your nature, or if it was how you were nurtured, or a little bit of both?
I think both. I
Yeah.
think I had it innately in me. I always believed in myself since I was younger, but it took my parents to pour that into me as well. So I think it was nurtured in terms of the resources and the how I was able to communicate with people around me. But then I also think with every founder is something in you that you're born with, right? That just gives you that little edge of like, I could do anything. It doesn't matter if people think I'm crazy. It doesn't matter if it sounds crazy to you, right? Like, I'm going to do this, and you need that. So that's something that's, I think, organic within yourself.
That's so amazing. And so, when you talk about your journey as a founder, and this is your second tech company,
Yeah.
kind of walk us through how the mindset was so pivotal in terms of the motivations that you had to go forward and build your first tech company, and then
Yeah.
to come back at it and build a second tech company.
Listen, I'm,
So
I'm 2 times crazy. It sounds like I'm 2 times crazy. Right?
that's what they say. They do say that every time, like, you forget about the process,
So
right?
you forget about it. You're like, wow, but you know what? You enjoy the process so much, and you just have to keep it going, right? So like I said before, I was always been an entrepreneur since I was younger. So I was like 10 years old selling Avon. I wasn't supposed to, right? But I've always wanted, I had this drive of like, I want more since I was younger. So I also was doing like acting and theater, but I knew I had to go to school to do something. I knew I wanted to do something, build something, be something. I was going to do something, right? So I was getting my master's in healthcare management, and then I just had the idea of, what if I'm able to add my voice or music to just to communicate? So it just came up with the idea, right? I just had the pop up in my head. And then I started, I didn't know anyone in tech. I had no background in tech. So I literally was just like Googling and on Yahoo, like figuring out like, does someone have this idea? What is the market? Um, and then I talked to my friends and my family around me about like, what do they think about this? I mean, then I just went full. I believed in it so much that I just went full throttle with it. I had no background in it, right? I had no one to kind of direct me on like, what's the best way to create a tech company. But I had the belief in myself of like, I could get this done, and I think it can work. And that's kind of all I needed to kind of drive the boat more. And I remember in the beginning, when I started my first company, I met with this developer because I was trying to get him on my team to like have some equity, and help me build this app. And I remember he told me, he was like, I don't think you should do it. There's so many apps out there like that. I said, okay, you don't believe in it, and that's fine, right? But if I didn't believe in myself, I would have took that like, oh my God, he doesn't believe. Okay, so he knows more than me, right? Because he's been in tech. Let me just like move this out the way and do something else. But I believed in it so much that I did not care what anyone said, and I kept it. I kept it going. And I think in our first year, I ended up partnering with Shell and Pennzoil, right? So it's like, when you believe in yourself, right, and you have that confidence in your idea, you never know where that's going to take you, you know.
And that is so essential, because that's just it. Several things that you've said so far. One, being introduced to The Secret. So the book that I use that's a precursor to The Secret is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. Have you read
I've
The
never
Science?
heard of. No, science
So
of getting rich.
Science of Getting Rich was written back in the 1800s.
Okay.
So it's the precursor to Secret. And it's one
Okay.
of those books that, for me, I literally, as young as I can, if I'm exposed to young people, I give them the book. One of
Mhm.
my experiments is, I say, your 8 and 9 year young dreams. And so I try to reach kids at that stage, before it is that they're set in their ways, where they're still able to receive new information, and empower them with this idea and understanding that, yes, it's all about your thoughts. It's all about what you believe, and whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, they're both true. It's just
Mhm.
dependent upon what you believe. It's all those sayings that we hear, is the glass half full, half empty, all those things. When you
Yeah.
live long enough, you realize the true meaning of those different things, because you begin to see the manifestations, right, of
Mhm.
or how you were motivated by just those things. So you're
Yeah.
right. There's always going to be people that offer you an opinion, but what they don't realize is that when you have a vision, and I really had to come to that defense of the Almighty and the ancestors are guiding my steps. And
Hmm.
I realize is that it's not a conference call. So you
Yeah.
cannot understand my vision. I'm not asking you to understand my vision. I'm asking you to lend your expertise to a particular piece of me executing my vision.
Yes.
I don't need to check in with you about the validity of the vision because you're not the author of
Yeah.
that vision, right? You
I love
just can
that.
play a potential role.
Yeah. No, no, but you know what? I love that you said that because I think when we're reading these books, we can't forget to put God in it, right? And we have to understand and what I think really has helped me as an entrepreneur is that I understand that everything's in God's timing, right?
Yeah.
Not in my timing. I could want to be a billionaire today, but God knows exactly what I need and when I need it. So when I have that understanding, the process of being a founder and entrepreneur is so much easier because I feel like there's someone that's watching over me, that's guiding me, and that knows exactly where I need to be, you know? So when you have that understanding with that book that you read, was it The Science of Getting Rich?
Yes.
And even The Secret, when you tie that into your belief system, it gives you even a stronger ability to manifest and to really have confidence in yourself, you know?
Absolutely. And the things that I notice is there are times that I felt like manifestation is sluggish or what have you, or something is going and it feels like it's heavy, it's burdensome. And that's kind of a reminder because when it gets like that, then that means that I'm disconnected. I'm trying to
Mhm.
move forward as opposed to listening,
Mhm. Yeah.
following the guidance of what the next steps are, and sometimes I recall now because again, until you've started developing muscles and you don't develop the muscle without developing the muscle. It's the
Mhm.
work ethic that develops the muscle, right? It's going through, people want the outcomes, but they
Yeah.
don't always want to put in the work to get to the outcomes. Yeah, they want to wake
Yeah.
up tomorrow and be the CEO of a $1 billion company, but they wouldn't be able to sustain it because they
Yeah.
don't understand the work required to build it.
I
And
think
so if you don't understand the work required to build it, then unfortunately you're going to be ill-equipped if you were to be, blessed with that opportunity. You're not going to be able to sustain it because it's going to overwhelm you.
Yeah. And I have to agree because I think being a founder, right, being an entrepreneur, it looks so like, oh my gosh, you're taking over the world. It looks so good, right? And they don't understand all of the no's that we're getting behind closed doors, all of the chaos that is happening, right? But because we're on magazines or we're on podcasts showcasing what we have built, people think it's easy. So then they're like, I want to start a company. I'm like, okay, what research have you done? Oh, I just can't say that I'm a founder. I just no, there's actual work that needs to be done, and not everyone is meant for it. You know what I mean? Not everyone is meant to go down this journey. You have to know that. That's about understanding yourself as well. You know?
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. And that's really, I think that thing of, recognizing again from the standpoint of mindset to then
Mhm.
how you're motivated and more importantly, how you look at your manifestations, right? How do you manifest? How long can you go?
Yeah.
I play, I relate sometimes to the country China, right?
Okay.
And how China as a country has played a long game. And so when I talk to people about a long game, I remember when China began, and it was just like any other developing country. And they decided to become the manufacturers for the
Mhm.
US and other places, but primarily for the US, they began to be the outsourced manufacturing solution. And slowly and slowly and slowly, they built their country, their economy, and they began to become more than just the ability to manufacture. They began to become creators of technologies because now they've had an opportunity to work with enough other technologies that were being produced or products that were being developed and produced in the US. And so
Mm.
because they're the ones manufacturing, then they can reverse engineer and they can see opportunities for improvements and they can produce their own products.
Mm.
They're a strong economy,
Mhm.
a giant, a player, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times people want immediate outcomes. And so they don't recognize what it looks like to invest along the journey and what that's looking like as it's happening.
Yeah.
People don't see it. I talk about that a lot of times in development. Someone will say to me, "Oh, well, it was fast to build that structure." And it's like, no, it was fast to finish the construction part. What you don't realize is before we got to the construction part was we spent 5 to 7 years in some cases beforehand doing
Mhm.
all of the pre-development work,
Yeah.
and then before we even came out of the ground, we had to dig deep and work on the foundational infrastructure, all of those things that are underground to
Mhm.
support the structure on top. By the time you see it come out of ground, yeah, that maybe take, 15, but that's the finish. That's
That's
the
the easy part. That's the easy part. But you know what? I love that you said that because I don't believe when people talk about overnight success, right? Like, oh my gosh, they're an overnight success because you don't know that it took me 15 years to get this success, right? So you're really discounting my hours and the time and my stress that I really taken to create something, So I love that you pointed that in your example about China, and I think that as founders and as learners of lives, we have to like understand the world story, right?
yes.
Like even for me, I didn't know. I knew China was, the head of like manufacturing for the U.S., but to really understand how they went from zero to now, I think that's what we need to really understand to know our own journey and kind of like Rome wasn't built in a day, right? It might take 20 years, but you can get there.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why history is so great. And I think that's also why people spend so much time trying to control what is documented as history.
Mm.
Again, I love your business and being able to recognize the importance of having video. Although, again, these days we have the new idea around, making sure what's authentic versus AI generated
Yes.
because, there's this ability now to even manipulate those authentic messages. But the
Yeah.
idea is who tells the story
Mhm.
is the one, and who saves and preserves their version of the story is the one that sort of frames what it was. But it's those who really lived through experiences who are able to be contributors and should be contributors to the conversation, and more importantly how history is captured. And so
Mhm.
I think that that's even I'm finding myself wanting to make sure that I spent, again, that was the commitment to this, at least start producing some type of content somewhere. My heirs will be able to go back and go, well, what was our great 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 grandmother like? We have her, right? So we can hear her voice, we can see her, we can
Yeah.
hear what she thought was important, what she shared, what her concerns were,
Yeah.
versus what somebody else is saying. Maybe she's a blurb, one line in somebody else's story, but here we have 100,000 hours of content.
Yeah. And I like the point in terms of like you're not working for your first, you're working for your last name, right? So what can my lineage take from this and really like manifest for themselves, right? Because now their leader has done it, right? Their grandma, their auntie has done it. So that means I can do it too. Because she
Right.
gave me a roadmap to say I can do whatever I put my mind to. So I love that you mentioned that in just terms of
Yeah.
family and like cultivating that space for them to learn and to realize that she did it, I can do it too.
Absolutely. And that's so important. I mean, and that's so important, again, not only on the entrepreneurial journey, but that's what's happening in organizations. I mean, when we think about it, the reason that I think it's so important to understand macro markets is that they're all cyclical. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it continues to be a constant, ebb and flow in different sets of dynamics. I've told people over the years, my friends who know me laugh at me about my obsession with books. I'm a reader, I'm a regular reader, I'm just curious. But then I have specific things that it's about mastery, right? So I have my over 10,000, my 100,000 hours in certain places. And then, a cursory working understanding of other things just to be able to understand them from a level of curiosity. But my point being is that if it was one answer in one particular, I have this book called Business, and it's a
Okay.
good 1,000-page supersized book, right? And so
Okay.
I've said, if there was one answer to how you launch, scale, and expand and sustain a business, trust me, it would be in one of the books that I have. But
Mm,
because the markets are dynamic, people are dynamic, the macro and micro market impacts are dynamic, there are so many variables that are constantly in flux that
mhm,
it's not one set solution. And the bigger part of this is that we're each being guided by that higher power to the degree that we're plugged in. So
mhm.
some people are plugged in and they're having a journey that manifests, certain outcomes. Other people are not. So then
Yeah,
they're also having a journey, right? And
yeah.
so it's those competing sometimes beliefs and energies.
Yeah. And I think it's about your intuition, right? Because your higher power is giving you, whether you listen or not. And that's how in tune you are with who you're talking to, right? But I think every founder, every business person has an intuition. And it's not going to be in books, right? It's just going to be right here on what you should do, you know? And I think listening to that, cultivating that voice and really trusting yourself with that is what drives you from another person. And that's why I think there's really no competition when it comes to like businesses in a sense, in terms of like another entrepreneur being, anxious that someone else is in their space, or like someone's, because no one is going to do it like you. No one's going to manifest what you have in your head. No one's going to make the decisions that you, because you know what, God is giving you guys each a different way of how to manifest what you want, so I think when you come in with that understanding, business is so much different than when you don't have that peace and understanding of, okay, what's for me is for me, and who's talking to me is for me. What I'm manifesting is for me, and that's all that matters.
And that's really the big base premise that Wallace Wattles in The Science of Getting Rich, that's one of the major premises that he expresses throughout the literature is about your assignment, your gifts, your
Or
abundance is your
yeah,
abundance. And
yeah,
it's not influenced by anyone else. There's no
mhm,
competition. In
yeah,
fact, the more we each expand and interpret, the more the universe expands, to make space
yeah,
for our gifts and our opportunities. So we
yeah.
create the abundance that we seek by seeking it.
By seeking it, and guess what? And there's so much room for collaboration, which
Yeah.
gives you even further, right? So we're not competing, we're collaborating, which makes
Yes.
everyone win. I think when you just want to see yourself win, you're not in a healthy mindset. Because
Right.
that's not how God wants you to operate. He wants you to operate in abundance for yourself and for others as well.
And
So
it's not sustainable because think about it. If you have it all, you get hit by a bus, then
what's gonna
it's
happen?
right. It's a
Or
wrap.
or if you want to go on vacay, right, with your
Right.
friends, and you're the only one who's a millionaire, how's this gonna work? I mean, you can
Right.
vacate them, of course, but I'm saying you want other people to win so they can live like you as well.
Exactly. No, exactly. I think that and so what we talked about, what I got early on in business, I remember people used to say to me that I was weird because I recognized that the structures of how the economies were doing business was from a zero sum game, a win lose business proposition.
Mhm.
And that is what has been the dominant philosophy in business. That's the imperialistic philosophy. That is why we have war in other countries, because the US, the UK, and France and all of these countries, these superpowers decided that they were going to split up the world and
Mhm.
control the world.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
What has happened is that those practices are finally unraveling. I used to say, no, the only thing that I thought would work was a positive sum game, a win win proposition, because again, it's that same idea. If every time you do business with me, you lose and I win, you're going to be out of business. You cannot sustain yourself in business taking an L every time. So you got to make money too. We both
Yeah,
have to make money in
yeah,
order to be able to sustain our organizations and operations. And so that's the big shift that I can say that thankfully I've lived long enough to see come to manifest. And it
yeah.
was interesting because even as I see all of these shifts, I'm like, oh my God, the Almighty and the ancestors. Although I created the JV, I was working to be a billionaire in my 20s, and I got to a $250 million back company, and I was thinking, okay, next stop is bill. I wasn't supposed to do it then because enough
Mhm.
things hadn't happened in the world. Like, I am supposed to be where I am as a CEO building a global company right now because
Listen, timing, right? Time,
timing,
God's timing. It's just
God's timing.
sometimes we can't understand it, but I think when we trust Him, we let
Yes.
it go. It's kind of like,
You
Lord, this is not for me
surrender.
right now. You surrender, right?
Surrender. And
Yeah.
that's what I got. And that's where, I was frustrated. And then when I remember a year ago when I finally graduated from law school and I was trying to rush and the Almighty shut me down. I mean, like literally shut me down. Like I couldn't even talk for a few days. And he
Oh
was
no,
like, we gonna sit you because I know what
you
you
need
get
some
ready
rest.
trying to run straight from you've been in 7.5 years of doctoral. I had completed a DBA, the dissertation, and now graduated from law school all back to back. And it's like,
Wow.
so now you're trying to run into no, sit your butt down. And I
Yeah.
remember having to sit in silence. And it was literally May last year. I remember because Mother's Day, I'm in the bathtub for 3, and I was like, I spent 4 days in silence. All I
Mm,
could do was hear, and it was as if the Almighty and the ancestors were just giving me dictation. This
mm,
is what you're going to do. This is why you're going to do it. It was like, be still and
yeah.
hear. And I'm so grateful again.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was anxious because again, I had been talking to, preliminary investors and I felt like I needed to hurry up or they were going to lose interest in me because, I
Mm,
had been dragging them along because I didn't expect them to be interested in me before. I was really ready because I was like, I'm not dropping out of law school. Like I've
yeah.
waited this long to go. I am going to graduate before I can execute this global business plan. That was a gift for me. So I'm taking
Mm,
my gift.
oh,
I'm getting my gift. I'm getting my gift, you know.
You're like, this is what so the question I have for you is that when you went from getting your doctorate to your JD, do you feel like you needed those accolades in order to be prepared for the investors? Or was it just something that
No,
you wanted
these
to
were
do to
it was personal stuff for me. So what
okay,
happened was I had prepared from 9 years old to high school to go to UC Berkeley and to become a plastic surgeon pre-med. When I
okay,
got to 10th grade, my mother was having financial difficulties and she told me that I couldn't go to Berkeley.
okay.
So he needed me to, just like she was like, get your diploma and get a job so you could help pay the mortgage. And I was like, this is crazy. I didn't have to take all these gate classes. Like you could have told me this when I was 9. You could have told me this when I was 10. You could have told me this when I was 11. But you wait until I've satisfied everything now to go to UC Berkeley that now you tell me that I can't go. Oh
Mhm.
man. So I was like, Mom, all right, let's make a deal. At least let me get a 2-year degree so I have something more than a high school diploma. And I'll
Yeah.
get the rest of my education on my own dime somehow.
Okay.
That was the gift, the promise that I made to myself. And
Okay.
so with having, the businesses, it was always difficult to try to go to school when I was running a company. Companies are difficult. I remember I had, so I did get the 2-year degree from FITM. That's how I ended up going to FITM in San Francisco, which
Okay.
ended up being a huge blessing because the professors own companies. So so it ended up that the Almighty again had the ultimate work it all out.
Mhm, mhm.
But when I was being attacked, when I was the CEO of the $250 million JV, the one thing that they tried to say was, why they were attacking me was because I didn't have advanced credentials. All I had was an A degree, but I was the brilliant brain it was all my stuff, and that
Hold
was
on.
the thing is
Hold on.
that,
So when you're building that company, they were trying to shoo you off because
yes.
they feel like you didn't have a degree or
Yes.
any.
I wasn't worthy of the success that I had created, and they couldn't understand how I was doing it. I was advising so-called people that had, MBAs on how to make money. I was advising Fortune 500 companies. I was doing the work of somebody that should have had an MBA, and I didn't have one.
It's your
But
gift
my
because it's
work
your
was
gift.
brilliant.
Because
But
it's
my
your
work
gift.
because it's my gift and it
Mhm.
was brilliant, right? But it kind of created that sense of self-doubt too sometimes but I'm like, but then I would go and and it was outstanding. Like when I look
Mm,
back, and even now when I look back, I was cleaning out my garage and I'm like, stuff that I was writing at 18 and 19 is nothing but brilliant. What
mm,
this educational journey has given me, now I can speak from my experience, is they just tried to dumb me down.
mm, mhm.
So it was emotional trauma. I love
Mm.
to learn, yet in these environments of higher education, I found the most toxic experiences and the most unqualified teachers. They may have a credential, but they do not understand what teaching is about. If you
Mhm.
are a teacher, you should be a great learner.
That's what it is, right?
Yes.
Learning. That's what it's all
Learning.
about, right?
And if
Yeah.
you do not learn, if all you're doing is having somebody regurgitate some stuff that you have memorized, that is not teaching.
Yeah.
That is
But
not
you,
teaching.
but you know what? I think there's a lot of ego when it comes to
And it's
higher
all
education.
ego.
It's all ego,
And you
because
know, mhm.
no, I was gonna
Continue.
say because I know so many people that have no degree that are the smartest people on this earth that have made millions and billions of dollars, right? Have no degree, but it's just a talent, a gift that they have innately in them. And then I know people that have all degrees, and you look at them like, you know, you don't seem like you are the sharpest tool in the in the
Yes.
shack, you know. So I
Yes.
think you had a gift that no one could ever take away from you, right? Like you could have 15 million degrees. It doesn't matter. It doesn't take away. It doesn't add on to what you have, that what God gave you innately, you know.
Yes. And
So
so
yeah.
it's coming to that place of being able to say that, but also in a sense, it's kind of like talk to the hand. And so
Mm.
that's really what it was for me is that I don't have to, I don't have time for this. Let me just,
Bye, Felicia. Bye, Felicia. Bye, Felicia.
and that's it. So it's like, if you need to see that for whatever, we could check that box. But really, let me make sure that the authentic source is what's connected,
Mm.
because that's what's really going to deliver the outcomes.
Yeah.
And that's what really is. And I think it was just to make sure that, yeah, you're building this global multi-billion dollar organization. You don't have to second guess yourself in any way,
Hmm.
and you get to do what you wanted to do, and that was you wanted to have different tools that you can assess from your toolbox, which again, because I'm a researcher, so because I understand, so all of these were tools that allow me to really build this bigger global sustainable network where I can impact. I've set my intention to impact over the next decade 10 million entrepreneurs and organic farmers, and I can say that confidently because I've already built out. Part of doing all of these degrees was building out a lot of these different, components of those programs, as well as having an opportunity to execute them through my accelerators and incubators that I've executed. So it's not just theory on my part. I actually have examples of executional success and outcomes, in each of these areas. So again, that's why we're going to have to work on a campaign so we can get
Yes.
testimonials updated.
Yes. Yes, you know why? Because we need people to be vouching for why they're coming to you, why they love your center, right? And like we said before, when you hear those authentic voices and of experiences, right? No one could take that away. No one can say anything about that because you're hearing it from the source, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, China, it has been a fabulous conversation. We'll definitely have to have probably a part two and a part three, and who knows?
Yes, 4, 5, 6. Listen, I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, are there any final thoughts that you have before I let you go? Because I know I could talk to you for hours and hours.
You know, what I really want to leave the audience with is that your mindset is everything. If you don't have a clear mindset, if you don't have confidence in what you can do, or of confidence of who you are, then you're not going to see and manifest the life that you want to live. I think people take that for granted, like, my mind, but it's like that is the most powerful tool that God has given you, and you can either use it for good or use it for nothing. So believe in yourself, please manifest the life that you want.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to having you back on another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. I want you to have a fabulous day, and I'm going to follow up with you because we need to get those campaigns going.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm excited about it. I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'll speak to you soon.
Awesome. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.
Well, everyone, I want to thank you again. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with China as much as I did. And I hope you'll be back next week for another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. Remember, if it's noon Pacific Daylight Time, then that means that Dr. Money is live. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ardrey, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.